Hey everyone, Trent here. Today we're going to be talking about The Boys Season 1, which is on Prime Video. Now, if you aren't familiar with the comic book, it is written by Garth Ennis and Derek Robinson. And if you aren't familiar with Ennis's work, it is very over the top with gratuitous violence, rape, addiction, drug use, domestic abuse, and corruption, be it individual, political, or corporate. The themes are just over the top exaggerated, and this translates fantastically to this series. I could not have had more fun with this 8-episode series. Each episode goes for about 60 minutes and is just awesome. It's non-stop, fast-paced, frantic, and deals with all of these themes really, really well. One of the things that I really enjoy about the series is that there is a lot of contrast with the characters. There's a lot of development, and each character has a moral compass that is twisted or skewed. Something happens to a particular character at the start, they will get their comeuppance as the series progresses in interesting ways. Now, the basic plot sees young Huey, played by Jack Quaid, whose girlfriend has been absolutely mowed down by one of these superheroes called the Seven. The Seven include Homelander, Queen Maeve, Starlight, A-Train, formerly Lightbringer, Translucent, and Black Noir. Each of them, as I'm sure you can tell, have parallels to both DC superheroes and some Marvel superheroes, but as this was written initially for Wildstorm at the time, they are based more on the Justice League. And you can see a lot of traits and a lot of personality within each of these characters. So, A-Train mows down Huey's girlfriend, and distraught, he is then approached by Carl Urban's Billy Butcher. And Carl Urban with a British accent, can I just say, this is something I never knew we needed. Sounding like a Cockney Brit. Wonderful. Absolutely loved it. And he's introduced as an independent contractor with his group, The Boys, including Mother's Milk and Frenchie, and later, the female. So this group is designed to stop and keep these superheroes in check, because they literally just run rampant. They are happy to murder people. They're happy to take bribes. They are just corrupt and absolutely terrible people. And it's up to the boys to, ensure that they don't overstep their boundaries. And there's a lot of progression throughout the series where they go further and further and get drawn into this web of conspiracies. The superheroes are corporate reflections of themselves. They are owned by the Vault Corporation. Every decision that they make is for likes and social media views. Everything is on camera. It's glossy, it's pretty, but as soon as they're off camera, they're absolute assholes and absolute dicks. Homelander being the biggest one of all, and one of the greatest performances throughout the entire series by Anthony Starr. He is just an absolute arrogant asshole, and he plays it so well. You can see as the series progresses, the cracks starting to appear in his overconfident personality, and he has this little twitch in his face, and you get to grow and see how these characters really become the terrible, terrible people they are. And each act that they do just gets worse and worse and worse. There's one particular scene where where Maeve and Homelander have been asked to save a plane that's been hijacked by terrorists. They get there, and one of the terrorists shoots the captain. Naturally, Queen Maeve says, why don't you go and, Superman it and get underneath the plane? And Homelander's like, no, that takes too much effort. You got to factor in all these variables and such. They just let the plane of hundreds of people, well, I think it's 120 odd people, crash into the ocean. And they just twist it to the media saying that the terrorists did it. And this is one of the things that is great about the show. You get to see them on camera and then off camera, and you get to feel the hatred for these characters building. And one of the things that's done really well in this series is that as the series progresses, characters that make these horrible decisions and their moral compass has already been questioned, they've done something despicable, they get their comeuppance generally later in the series. Now, the perfect example of this that isn't going into too much spoiler territory for what happens later is the Deep, who is played by Chance Crawford. In one of the initial scenes where he's with Erin Moriarty's Starlight, he tells her, when she's introduced into the Seven, she's a new recruit, to suck his dick without consent, and virtually rapes her. It's a despicable act. It makes you hate the Deep straight away. And every scene that he's in, you instantaneously, when he pops up, you hate him, you despise him. But later in the series, you start to see why he is like that. He's this vulnerable person who's been made fun of by literally everyone. He's essentially the same butt of jokes Aquaman was for a long, long time. And we see that effect that it has on him, to the point where, I think it's in episode 6 or 7, he actually is in the same situation where he's with a girl who abuses her power, and he says no. and she fingers his gills, which are on his ribcage. It's a hilarious and confronting scene at the same time. Due to the dark humor that is incorporated into the series, it makes you feel uncomfortable watching it and makes you feel uncomfortable laughing at it. Because that's the type of humor that Ennis has in the comic books, and it's been adapted here. It's a lot of dark humor, and it makes you feel uncomfortable, but you do also laugh at it, and you feel terrible for laughing at it. The pacing of the plot and story is fast, is frantic, the action and violence is over the top, but it's not overused, and the performances are stellar. Carl Urban, Jack Quaid, Anthony Starr, Erin Moriarty, these are all great performances. And actually, Erin Moriarty as Starlight was really strong. She had the vulnerability of the new person going into this group of gods, and they all treat her like absolute dirt. So she's got the fragility, but she also wants to be the strong character. And every time she does something strong, she gets shot down for it because it's like, oh yeah, that's your shtick. That's your social media face. Let's see the real you. But it is the real you. So once again, it's a great series that deals with a lot of issues in modern society, particularly around social media and what we get. Another great performance is Jesse Usher as A-Train. He's a drug addict who is doing everything he can to maintain his speed. And he's tied to this plot that involves this drug that can potentially bring down the entire superhero community in Vought. So it's great to see all these little threads that happen throughout the series. They are all relevant and they are all important. When you think that a conversation is going on, that you're like, where is this going? Why is it here? It pays off later on. There's a scene that happens in the very first episode that it's a superhero nightclub where you see all these debaucherous acts, including a guy like an elastic guy, like go down on someone across the other side of like his butt. Yeah, try picturing that. And that then pays off in episode 5. So all these little things that happen are all relevant. There are some issues, there are some scenes that you kind of think, wow, that's quite jarring, and why is that there? The Deep is one of those when he gets shipped off to, I think it's Iowa, I'm not entirely sure, or Ohio, I think. His scenes are kind of just chopped in there. There's also a scene where Billy goes and visits his sister that's just out of nowhere, but I was 5 hours into the binge then, so I may have missed something. But overall, it's really, really good, and we get a lot of different complexes. We have Homelander with his adipose complex, his hatred of his father growing up, and that then plays into his mummy and daddy issues that he has with Madeline Sitwell, who's the head of Vought, who's played by Elizabeth Shue, and I just really like this show. There's so much to dissect and so much to go for. I could talk about it for hours on end. The music is awesome, the action, the CGI is not terrible, it's a high budget, it's very glossy. And it's just really, really good. I enjoyed it, and I hope you guys do too. And yeah, let me know your thoughts on The Boys down below. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. It's not perfect, but it's very damn well near, and it's a great alternative if you're tired of the goody two-shoes Marvel superheroes and DC superheroes that you've been seeing. I recommend picking up the comic book as well. It is very, very true to the comic, although some characters and some circumstances have been changed. I definitely recommend it, and if you're a fan of Preacher, I definitely think you'll like this as well. Anyway, I'm Trent. We've changed our name to the Fandom Zone. And yeah, let us know what your thoughts are in the comments below. Subscribe to our channel, follow our handles at Fandom Zone AUS, and yeah, keep it nerdy.